Greetings, fellow armchair Imagineers. In honor of Black History Month, we thought we'd showcase some of the great defining Black characters that the world has come to love.
Last year we tackled the MCU, so to match that selection of excellent characters, we're paying tribute to DC's roster of influential heroes, specifically their triumphs in television.
So without further delay, let's explore the history of John Stewart's Green Lantern on Black History Heroes.
Yeah.
All right. Okay, Dragon. So welcome, Season 2, Black History Heroes. You know, we've come a long way since doing a riff podcast on My Friend Martin back in the day for Black History Month.
Yep.
So Dragon, the last year we started out with Luke Cage. I'm Luke Cage.
Luke Cage.
We're this year we're going with something very appropriate. It's also one of the, let's see, this is the first DC African American character. Am I right?
Well, first, here's
at least mainline hero.
Yeah, first costumed hero, yes.
Okay. And that's very similar to Luke Cage's status on the Marvel side of things, am I right?
Well, not exactly. Tiki Falcon. He'd be on the line. See, Falcon was the first. If I'm correct, Falcon was the first African American superhero ever created. And Luke Cage was right after him, but Luke Cage was the first to headline a book.
Okay, well, still there's some correlation there. There's some, both characters have kind of different firsts, I guess, in different ways. You're making it a little more complicated than I wanted it to be, but, alas, I think there's still a correlation there. I think John Stewart is in many ways DC's Luke Cage, just with a much more complicated backstory. Holy crap, Dragon. I spent the day doing a crash course on this guy, all right? And I want to lay out, I really love John Stewart as a character, and I like the hot girl dynamic and everything, and, it's all really good stuff. But, man, Dragon, I gotta say, Green Lantern, like, just the sci-fi elements of Green Lantern and the world building and all that, it's never won me over, Dragon. It's just never won me over. It's, like, to me, it's just, it's gobbledygook to me. I'm sorry. Like, again, no disrespect to the character. It's just, I don't know, man. I'm just not a fan of the Green Lantern concept. I don't know what it is, man. It's French to me. It's sci-fi French. It reminds me of something like Dune or something. It's like, I want to follow it. I want to be a fan of it, but it's just like goes over my head. It's a little bit too dense for my, for my tiny little brain, Dragon. I'm sorry. I don't know what to tell you. I was following along as best I could, but I was lost for long stretches of this one.
Well, the bright side is John Stewart, out of all the Green Lanterns, is probably the most disconnected from the space stuff traditionally. I mean, basically, I showed you like the one episode really gets into that. Like he had ordinarily people are trained by Kilowog on Oa. Like Hal Jordan is trained by Kilowog. You met Kilowog. And I believe in John Stewart's case, he was trained by Katma Tui, who again you kind of got a sense of in the Hearts and Minds episodes. Basically, that's like the only time they really dive into kind of most of the OA stuff with John Stewart.
Yeah, the Hearts and Mind episode, man. That was I even I sent you a message in the middle of the day. I was like, man, Hearts and Minds is a little too high sci-fi for me, man.
It's not my favorite. It's not my favorite either. And again, I did emphasize that one you didn't need. That one was just if you wanted to firmly get into some background, if you wanted to. Which again, not a must. But anyway.
Wait, I thought the alternate history one was the one that I didn't need.
Well, you didn't need that one. That one I put there because it was fun, and that one's more like kind of dessert at the end of the tunnel sort of thing. But it doesn't really.
All right, fair enough.
Okay, the point is, we were talking about John Stewart, kind of the most human of all the Green Lanterns here, and boy, oh boy, John Stewart, wonderful character. Let's break him down. Before we break him down, let's start at the book of Genesis, if you will. Let's start at the very beginning with John Stewart. So his creation.
All right, you set the stage for this one, Dragon.
Sure. So John Stewart, his first appearance was Green Lantern number 87 from 1971, I believe. He was created by the wonderful pair, the pair that kind of made Batman the Batman we know and love today. Without these two guys, we don't have the 70s Batman, which means we don't have the animated series, which means you can, like, basically we don't get Batman getting into a darker direction that gets Frank Miller. Basically, these guys are pivotal to Batman. Oh, Denny O'Neil and Neil Adams, again, the Wonderkin team. Basically, as I always like to say, it's like, for me, you have Snyder and Capullo as kind of the modern version of these guys. These guys are the historic team in all of comics. O'Neil and Adams. They did not just for Batman, which is why I'm bringing up all the Batman stuff. They're known for Batman, but even if they didn't work on Batman, they'd have a lot to go off of the stuff they did with Green Arrow and Green Lantern, because they paired them up historically. Green Arrow and Green Lantern being buddies, and a lot of interesting things on the side, like John Stewart. So basically, the reason we have John Stewart is basically how you're probably wondering how the heck do we get John Stewart? It's very simple. So DC, they need it. So they're doing the Green Lantern comic, right? And you have Hal Jordan. Hal Jordan was the very original Green Lantern's Alan Scott, but then of course they basically rebrand everything with the Silver Age, the big old Silver Age, kind of basically when comics start to get better. And we have the red suited Flash, and we have Green Lantern with the whole sci-fi space gimmick. That's when we kind of do all of that, and basically we have one singular Earth Green Lantern. This is before they get the bright idea of like there's a whole bunch of them in space, like the Green Lantern Corps. Basically, the stuff you seem to not be so thrilled about. Basically, all the other ones in space. Basically, this is like right, but that shows you how far back this was. These before they really kind of nailed down that concept. And they're just coming up with like an alternate, basically a guy on the side that become the Green Lantern if something bad befalls this one, like the whole origin of Green Lantern. Like someone dies and the ring finds somebody else.
Okay, so like the Guardians thing, like were the Guardians in the original comic book, and
yes.
were they did similarly to Justice League?
Yes, the Guardians are always in there. The idea of like a group in space that, again, the whole basically it was just one lantern. It was just the Green Lantern, and then Guardians created the Green Lantern, and they pick a guy to kind of there's a sector of all over the place, but they didn't really have an idea of like all of them meeting up and with each other. The idea is like every planet got a Green Lantern. And we only focused on Earth.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. All right.
This is there's basically the Earth sectors 2814, and the idea is that DC had kept planning on the Guy Gardner character, who eventually did get his time in the sun. And Guy Gardner, I forget if at this point he was introduced, but the point is like Guy Gardner was either about to be introduced or he was or basically they needed to get him out of the equation. I believe it's the former. I believe that they haven't introduced Guy Gardner yet, but he was the next one on the docket who eventually got introduced. But the idea was Guy Gardner is kind of a divisive Green Lantern. He's kind of the imagine if
from what I understand, Dragon, correct me if this comparison is out of line, but kind of seems like a Jason Todd.
It's kind of imagine a cross between Jason Todd and Biff Tannen.
God.
That's the thing. See, Guy Gardner, he's kind of a snot. He is very much kind of as Denny O'Neil would phrase it, like he phrased Jason Todd so many times. Kind of a snot nosed kind of punk. That's kind of what Guy Gardner is. He had a charm to him. He kind of grew on you.
But he also got killed off in a very brutal, audience pleasing way, much like Jason Todd.
That's the thing. Guy Gardner did survive this, though. That's the thing. So what happens with Guy Gardner is. So again, I believe it's like they had the Guy Gardner concept, and they were trying to introduce him as the second Green Lantern, right? And they had the character all lined up, and eventually they introduced him as the third Green Lantern. So Guy Gardner gets hit by a bus.
Oh God!
he gets hit by a bus, and the reason for this is so Neil Adams. We got to talk about Neil Adams for a spell here. Neil Adams is an MVP in the comics industry. He's the guy who got Siegel and Schuster credit on Superman after many years of being kind of screwed out of their deal. Again, he's basically one of the major artists you think of with Batman, like kind of the one of the definitive Batman designs in comics is Neil Adams. Wonderful storyteller, terrible writer, but brilliant artist. I've tried. I've met Neil Adams, and he's wonderful. And if you listen to Fat Man on Batman, Neil Adams will blow you away. One of the most gifted storytellers I've ever had the pleasure of hearing. But at the same time, I've tried.
What's so wrong with his writing? Does he have like a distinct flaw about him?
Here's the thing, Teak. It's so trippy. If you listen to Fat Man on Batman or him telling these stories again, he'll spin you such a yarn, and you'll be like, "Oh my God, I have to seek out this book." And I sought out a couple of those books. And I tell you again, like I much prefer the pitch than the actual story. The man can't die. Here's the thing: Neil Adams' problem, in my humble opinion,
kind of like how, just to link it back to Kevin Smith, it's kind of like how the backstory of Tusk is more entertaining than Tusk itself.
Here's the thing, and look, I think a lot of people share this opinion, but this is for my money. I think Neil Adams he can't write dialogue to save his life. He has great.
You know what, Dragon? I can relate to that, man. I can relate to that because I can do outlines for stories that I'm really proud of, but then when I sit down to write them on paper, I'm just like, oh man. Like Dragon, I literally have an outline for a novel, like a 13-chapter novel set around my hometown. I don't want to get off on a tangent about this. Just to link to, I can relate to the whole, like, the problems of writing. And this is a concept that I've had in my head for like a decade, right? This whole outline that fills up an entire comp book has been in my room for a decade. But whenever I put pen to paper on the actual, book, the freaking dialogue just feels stiff as hell, man. And it's a problem because I'm actually proud of the story, So I take no credit away from that. I give him respect for trying, because dialogue is a tricky thing, man. It really is. It's, oh man, as someone who kind of like, I've tried to study creative writing for a living. So anyways, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to.
The point
on a tangent that just kind of struck a chord.
The point is, that's always been the weird thing with Neil Adams. He'll tell you about Batman Odyssey. Batman Odyssey sounds like one of the most amazing Batman stories you've ever heard pitched to you. It's again, the man's brilliant at coming up with some really great ideas. Because again, Odyssey was the first time he was kind of writing.
It sounds like Max Landis.
Well, I mean, Landis is a little different because his stories actually do read really well as well. Because that Superman comic, I thought that it kind of lived up.
Yeah, but okay, I'm more thinking about like how Max Landis, like he has all these movie projects that sound really cool, and he
right, like with the other stuff. Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah,
he outlines them in a really cool way, but like none of them ever get made.
Right, like the Die Hard, like Die Hard in a school, like all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, so that's the thing. So Neil Adams, again, that's kind of the weird thing is right. But the point is, Neil Adams, again, the guy was revolutionary, and again, basically, these guys came up in the '70s, really, with late '60s, early '70s, and really, again, defined comics in the '70s, kind of when the Silver Age was kind of like getting in kind of the middle of the Silver Age. So essentially, Neil Adams has always been pushing the boundaries. And again, one of Neil Adams' big claims to fame is that he was one of the only artists who could draw black characters right, and like not doing like a superficial or really insulting manner. And DC, unfortunately, had that problem back in the day. It was one of the worst in the business with that problem. Like the first black character they ever introduced in Spirit did not go over well.
Wait! Not the Will Eisner Spirit.
Well, that's the one I'm thinking of. Yeah, the Will Eisner Spirit. But then again, I think kind of. Well, eventually the Spirit kind of was introduced.
I didn't know the Will Eisner Spirit was black. Huh? Interesting.
Well, no. Not the Spirit has sidekick, and the sidekick was black. The sidekick.
Oh, okay. My bad. Okay.
Sidekick was a cab driver, and I believe his name was. I know it was Ebony something. I think it was Ebony White, which just makes it even worse.
Oh God, Ebony White. Oh God.
I know it was Ebony something. I'm pretty sure it was Ebony White because it sounded really insulting.
Jesus, I remember that. It is Ebony White, Dragon. That's pretty awful.
And again, that's his name alone. And the problem was Ebony White. He had a really insensitive design. So the point is, this all has a relevant point. The point is, like DC historically.
Okay, I know it's irrelevant, but I'm gonna Google this.
All right. Okay, just stay focused. Okay, so.
I'm focused. I'm just like, I want to get a reaction out of this, man. This sounds really.
And just look at the original Ebony White designs. Now, like the Darwin Cook, he fixed everything, but before that, it was just not good. Anyway, so Neil Adams, the point is he's pushing the boundaries, especially with kind of race relations in comics. Again, basically reflecting the changing times in comics, which is really dicey and unheard of. And this is kind of after like the '50s McCarthyism that was going on in comics, where the Comics Code Authority and everyone was really afraid. And, like they had the uber censor everything. So this is like coming right out of that. So again, there's really revolutionary times. And in regards to John Stewart, so Neil Adams. They got to come up with the next Green Lantern, and I believe Julie Schwartz and Neil Adams, and you heard the clip I sent you, right? And it was the same thing from the Fat Man on Batman. It was
I heard it.
It was a reiteration of it, where basically Neil Adams has this historic thing where he would butt heads with this editor, Julie Schwartz, who again is someone to hail because again he's responsible for the Silver Age of comics. Like we don't have a Flash TV show today without Julie Schwartz. But still, George Schwartz was not perfect, and he was a businessman. He was an editor. So the point is, like, artists kind of butting heads with the editors, what gets us these great comics and these great stories. And Neil Adams would constantly butt heads with the guy, and he basically says, Julie Schwartz, okay, what do you think of we need a new Green Lantern. What do you think of Guy Gardner? So he's a gym teacher. Essentially, yes. And Neil Adams,
dear God. I'm sorry. Oh, wow.
Yeah, he just saw Ebony White just now. Is it Ebony White or is it just
wow. Whoa.
You have a name with that image that's startling you right now? Is it Ebony?
I'm pretty speechless, Dragon. I'm speechless. That is awful.
I told you.
All right, anyways, I'm sorry. I had to see it with my own eyes.
Right. Wow. Anyway, getting back on point. So Neil Adams, he basically says, why can't we make him? Well, basically, wants to reflect. He had this great analogy where if you ever watch the Olympics, you never have three white guys staying on the podium. It's going to be people of differing races and of differing races on the stand. You have like black people, Asian people. That's kind of the analogy he likes to use with that. And that's kind of essentially he has a point there. You're never going to find three people who are exactly the same in an event like that or in the world. And of course, the best argument he ever made was that you have like Batman and Superman. The ring past those guys, and it goes for the gym teacher. Really, that's who the ring goes for? Like, first guy was a test pilot. That's a brave job. That makes sense. You need a lot of willpower to get you going through all that fear. Makes sense. It interlocks perfectly.
Dragon, it takes a lot of bravery to navigate all that teen angst and drama, my friend.
So. Essentially gets into this famous argument with Julie Schwartz, where he first off, he basically wants a non-cliche black character, like not a guy who's in a ghetto, not a guy who's is like he's a street guy, like basically a guy who's an educated, essentially an architect, an educated. He started off as an architect.
Not Ebony White.
No, Tiki, not Ebony White. So the point is, he's not from a ghetto. He's an architect. He's a college-educated guy, and of course, then we had the name story. And the name story is just hysterical. And the thing that amuses me to no end about this is Denny O'Neil's role in this story, where Denny O'Neil, of course, these guys work together, a really good team, and Neil Adams he's getting ready to draw the book, and he's going through like the pages and everything, and the speech bubbles and the writing and so forth. And at least they come back after the dialogue's put into the finished artwork, I guess. He's like, wait a minute. He goes to the name of John Stewart. It's Lincoln, Washington. He says, Denny, Lincoln, Washington. He says, not me. I keep imagining Denny O'Neil like raising his hands up in there like a surrendering position, like, not me. It's Julie Schwartz, not me. Go to him. Of course, he yelled. He basically chews out Julie Schwartz or Lincoln, Washington. Yeah, it's basically. So this is what I'm saying with the Ebony White thing, too. This is what I'm saying, where you have like just historically a lot of bad name choices in the early years.
The guy who owned slaves and the guy who freed the slaves.
So pretty much. So then they get to then of course, like, give him a real name. And it basically got into this hilarious thing where Julie Schwartz is like kind of being bullied with him. Okay, fine. F you.
I know. Like, I tell you what we're gonna do. We're gonna build a time machine, and we're gonna time travel to the early 2000s, Dragon. We're gonna time travel to the early 2000s, and there's gonna be a show called The Daily Show. All right,
it's just the ultimate punchline to that joke.
I'm sorry, I had to work it in there somewhere, Dragon.
I know. I just wish you would have waited half a minute, but okay. The point being, just they got into like this "fu" argument. "Fu, what do you? Okay, fine, we'll do it your way. What do you want to call him? Come up with a name. Like, it's just any name, just an ordinary name. Give him a name." Like, on the spot, it came up with John Stewart.
I'm writing a book about what?
Pretty much, and of course, down the line, of course, little did he know John Stewart would come into fame. And every time I type in John Stewart to look up clips or information. It's always the other one that pops up first. It's always
it's going to be the same dilemma with the Joss Whedon Serenity and the Matthew McConaughey Serenity now.
Yeah, I'm sure about that. Yeah. There's a rumor that
how many years, Jack?
There's always this rumor, by the way. I don't know how substantiated this is. There's a rumor that the John Stewart Green Lantern was modeled because he used to have this afro when he was first introduced, like kind of like a semi-afro. And the point is, like, I was wondering if some people think he was modeled after Sidney Poitier, the great actor. And I guess
Sidney Poitier is like, obviously he's an icon. Like, Dragon, I was thinking about this actually. If we were ever to do a Black History Heroes of like real life Black icons, like Floyd Norman is the one that instantly comes to mind. That
I know that, yeah.
To Disney, but Cindy Poitier would be another really good one, man. I mean, he's up there. Like he's definitely a trailblazer.
They call me Mr. Tibbs. Of course, I mean Poitier is amazing. That's what I'm saying. There's a rumor that again that icon was kind of applied to. Okay, we need a really great black character. Therefore, let's model him after Sidney Poitier.
Guess Who's Coming to Dinner might be like the best movie about race relationships ever.
Absolutely. So I'd like that to be true, but I honestly don't know. I think it's just like one of those word of mouth things. I don't think it's true, but I'd love it to be true though. All right. So speaking again of kind of Sidney Poitier and kind of some black icons, let's talk about kind of the legacy of kind of what the big kind of like the milestones that were accomplished through Jon Stewart. So that's the creation of them. Let's talk about like kind of what not the impact, but more so kind of like what the basically the big claims of fame you kind of start us off with, Tiki. Like so, here's the thing. So Jon Stewart was DC's first real black superhero, like the first costumed hero, and the second ever following Falcon from the Marvel side of things.
All right. Well, here's the thing that really fascinated me, Dragon, in terms of just doing kind of like a baseline amount of research on the comic book history of Jon Stewart, and in addition to like the, I don't know, how many episodes of Justice League do you think I watched today, Dragon? I watched everything you sent me. What is it, like 7 or 8, something like that?
Probably in the neighborhood of like 7.
So in addition to that, and keep in mind, a lot of those episodes were 2-parters.
So that's true, but they're always intended to be like 40 minutes, though. That's the thing. They had to break them up, so it's really you really watch one episode.
But anyways, in addition to that, I kind of just gave a quick glance. I watched a couple of the clips he sent me, and I gave a quick glance at the wiki page. And one of the things that really struck a nerve with me, Dragon, and I hope you can elaborate on this, is Hal Jordan did not like Jon Stewart in the beginning, and there was some perceived racism there. And Dragon, that really fascinates me. Can you illuminate on that at all? Because I feel like that might be a big element of kind of somewhat shape this character.
I'd love to, frankly. So here's the thing. So okay, so big thing. So as I was mentioning with Neil Adams, again, Neil Adams and Danny O'Neill, they had this revolutionary run on Green Arrow, Green Lantern. Okay, it's like I believe the big issue that kind of starts this sort of stuff is well, there's a very historic issue. Basically, their run was from like it's Green Arrow, Green Lantern number. Now, Tiki, you can read any of these if you ever wanted to, by the way, because again, now you have access to it. So it's Green Arrow, Green Lantern number 76 to 89. And in that run, there's an issue with a very historic scene where I'm sure you've heard about. Yeah, you've heard about
Dragon, why would I do anything else with my DC streaming service until I watch Teen Titans?
The good one's also on there, too. You got to elaborate.
Is Teen Titans go on there?
Thankfully not, and I love that's kind of the pointed, like, yeah, it's not on there.
Damn it. So I assume Teen Titans Go to the Movies isn't on there?
As far as I know, and as far as I hope, no.
That's the thing, Dragon. Like, I would not watch Teen Titans Go, but I'd at least rewatch Teen Titans Go to the Movies if it was available.
You know what's so funny, Tiki? I won't tell you where, but in Young Justice, in the new season of Young Justice, I won't tell you how, but there's an episode that makes fun of Teen Titans Go, and it made me so happy.
All right.
I mean, they make fun of it awesomely too. It's like you would again. It's a reason. It's Tiki. It's like the 53rd reason for you to watch Young Justice. You got to watch that from the beginning. But season 3, man, it's only halfway done. It was so great because they went on break till the summer right now. Okay, anyway. So I was getting at historically, and in that run, everyone knows the very historic scene where you have. And again, basically, as Green Arrow would call Green Lantern out and stuff, because Green Arrow was a very leftist kind of like he's kind of the liberal. He's kind of the guy. Well, he's the guy calling other people out on their stuff. Kind of the street level Green Arrow, kind of calling Green Lanterns kind of the intergalactic cop essentially out on his stuff here. Where Green Lanterns help. They're both working together in like kind of slummy neighborhoods in some really kind of different parts of town. And there was essentially there was a thing where Green Lantern he saved like a slumlord. He saved a white slumlord, And in doing so, basically, that Slum Lord pressed charges against kind of the black tenants who were basically protecting someone. Or basically, they weren't necessarily in the wrong except legally. They were legally in the wrong, but they were good people, and they were just kind of basically just standing up to the landlord who was just being kind of a scummy guy. And Green Lantern intervenes. He saves, he quote unquote saves the slumlord, but now again he's pressing charges against the people who he just kind of wronged, and Greener puts this in perspective for him. And what kind of drives the nail even further in there is a Neil Adams drawing one of the best pages ever drawn, with the most realistic black man you'll ever see. And the complete counter opposite to Ebony White, Tiki.
Oh God!
I'm saying like one of the most gorgeous, realistically rendered.
Ebony White would be a podcast, man. That would be a podcast.
Okay, but seriously, the point is like the most realistically rendered, especially for the time, like the first time you'd ever see something like this in comics ever, like the most realistically drawn black man in comics, thanks to Neil Adams. Calling Green Lantern out, historically saying, basically, what's your problem, Green Lantern? I've seen you help. I've heard about you. You helped the purple skins, the orange skins, the white skins. But what about the what about the black skins?
Oh, nice.
And he's calling him out, and the idea and the permeate thing. Definitely, I believe this is before John Stewart was introduced, and basically, this is where I'm going with all this. Is that Green Lantern had an underlining. Basically, there was always a question of prejudice with Green Lantern. And he'd be called out for this sort of thing all the time, again, by Green Arrow in situations like this. And then he was paired up with a character. And again, it's completely coincidental. But then, and then again, they didn't know they were going to create John Stewart. But of course, they create John Stewart. And then they open themselves up to a really great story idea where, okay, we've been flirting with this with with Hal Jordan. And now we introduce John Stewart, who, again, is calling Hal Jordan on this kind of this underlining prejudice. And basically, there's this, I perceived it to be that Hal had learned from his lessons, but now he'd be kind of accused of still having some racist tendencies, which definitely prejudicial tendencies, which definitely kind of caused some conflict between him and John Stewart. And Green Lantern called into question John Stewart's, like, if he's like again, if he's giving preferential basically he had to protect him. We'll get into it when we get into the comic stuff momentarily here.
Okay.
We'll put a pin in that one right now. But let me talk about some other stuff real quick. So a big thing with, screw it, let's talk about it now. I'm sorry, so you got to talk about it. Okay, I'll start going. So basically, we have the early stories with John Stewart. The early stories of John Stewart. The first story, I believe you got like a little snippet of this too. So the first story was that John Stewart, he gets the ring because he's replacing, we need a reserve member, and the idea is Hal Jordan's showing him the ropes. And like their first mission is, John Stewart, who before he got the ring was like a discriminated architect. He was an architect who's passed over for jobs, again, presumably because he was black, and he always had a problem with authority, and this definitely didn't help when he's dealing with kind of the.
Is there any correlation between the architect thing and the like what was the big reason for him getting the position in the first place?
Well, the original reason was the architect thing. Was the fact that, again, he thought creatively. He's a creative guy, and again,
Gotcha.
He was creative, and he had an upstand. It was primarily he's a creative guy, and also he was he's very he's very honor driven guy. The guy stood by his principles. So it was kind of the two elements, and basically the stood by his principles part is what we learned in the story. Is that Hal's given them the task. They're on the job. They have to protect this guy who's giving these really bigoted racist rallies where they're basically it's like basically the guy's a very profound bigot guy. It's like Archie Bunker without the charm and charisma, if you will. Like imagine if Archie Bunker had no redeemable qualities. That's essentially what this guy was.
God.
And he was a loudmouth giving a rally, just kind of denouncing black people. And the guy was a real scumbag. And the idea is that John Stewart had to protect this guy. And again, John Stewart's a guy who has a problem with authority already. And he was like kind of, he was just kind of taking shots at the guy. Like there was this thing where I don't know if it was the same guy, but these were the kind of issues that kind of gave Hal Jordan pause. And there's a legitimate pause here where he kind of dipped like oil on the guy, almost like practically tarred and feathered the guy without like the hot tar. It's basically the guy was like covered in oil. And he said, "Oh, now you look better." It's that sort of, again, really edgy stuff when it was first. Now we look back on a little slightly horrified. It's like, wow, they got away with that. Wow. So some really edgy stuff in the early years of these stories, and the idea is this again. So this politician he eventually had to protect, and it seemed Hal Jordan was really freaked out because it seemed like John Stewart he let the guy get attacked. But in reality, John Stewart went after the actual gunman because this was like a staged event. The point is, I don't want to get all the convoluted stuff, but the point is, Hal Jordan doubted his commitment to the job. He thought he let this guy get attacked because he was a racist. In reality, John Stewart was clever enough, and he saw through what the actual scheme was, where it was a fake assassination attempt to capture the real crime that was going on in the meantime, and he saw through it, and he stopped, and then he earned Hal Jordan's respect. And their dynamic was really like Lethal like Lethal not Lethal, it was like Die Hard 3. Die Hard 3 with had Sam Jackson and you had Sam Jackson, you had Bruce Willis, and the idea is they would Zeus and John McClane, they would butt heads, and Zeus would constantly suggest he'd constantly jump the gun and think that that John McClane was a racist when of course
Bruce Willis is just like, hey, you want some of my Bruce Willis chicken? And Jackson's like, don't stereotype me, man.
And that's essentially what that whole movie was. At least before they became buddy, the first act of that movie is him thinking, what do you think of? Because you think about, what are you, a racist? You have all these preconceived notions. Where John McClane's like, no, we're in a situation, we're in Harlem right now. So that was the idea, and that's pretty much I don't know if there was a direct I don't know if that was the direct thing they're going for, or just coincidental. Again, this came out in the 70s, so I guess that was a decade later, so probably just completely coincidental. But essentially, that was their dynamic was,
Yeah, and I think that's a really cool thing to add into the into the comic books, is that whole idea of the the racial tension that can be overcome and persevere and lead to a lasting friendship and a lasting partnership. I don't know, Dragon. I think there's just something really interesting and powerful for that. And honestly, that's one of the big prevailing things that I think really shines through with him as a character.
Absolutely. Now, the big, cool, prolific kind of visual of John Stewart. We got to talk about this. This is really cool. John Stewart, as you notice in the animated stuff, and just as we noticed with the image before us here, and again, historically, I think only time to time did they ever break this rule. But from the very beginning, John Stewart is a character. Like all the Green Lanterns, like Hal Jordan and so on, they usually have a mask. They usually have a little green mask, the green domino mask, and John Stewart, he refused it because there's a moment in the first appearance of John Stewart where he says, "Hey, where's your mask?" He says, "I'm not wearing a mask." Basically, he's not hiding who he is. He's not masking his race because everyone. Yeah, it's kind of the mixture of he's not ashamed of who he is. He's just letting it all kind of on display.
Very similar to Luke Cage in a way.
Exactly, yeah, because Luke Cage is kind of beyond the costume, especially in the later years, and kind of beyond. He's not wearing a mask, he's not pretending to be someone else. And again, by that logic, he's kind of a symbol of his race, but also a symbol of not being ashamed of who you are. And again, kind of you are. I mean, look, the broader implication, I'm not saying this the literal interpretation, but just given the whole Lincoln, Washington of all we covered, again, it's kind of a reclaiming ownership and a reclaiming freedom of who you are. You're not you've decided this name for yourself, and you're going to be proud of that name. You're not going to obscure who that is. And again, it's kind of playing off the old stereotype, every the people of the same race look alike, and of course saying, well, if we do, that's anonymity in itself. But again, anonymity with this great power of the Green Lantern ring. So again, it's a lot of interesting stuff with the no mask thing. Cool.
Nice.
All right, let's see. One last big thing we got to hit with the legacy. So they did, and sorry. So there's one big story that you saw adapted, Tiki. There's a story called Cosmic Odyssey. Now, Cosmic Odyssey, well, Mike Mignola, the guy who did Hellboy, he drew this.
Yeah, story. I got to admit, Dragon, I tried to look into this, and the hard sci-fi stuff, I was like, okay, I'm just reading the Wikipedia summary. I'm just, this is a little deep for me, a little deep.
That's fair, because this one's a big one. This is
all Mike Mignola, so I might check it out on the streaming service. I'll admit, I might some retroactive research there.
Yeah, Jim Starlin, the creator of Thanos, Jim Starlin and Mike Mignola, they worked on this story, and this is all the New God stuff. This is all kind of the apocalypse, the stuff that was flirted with in Justice League that actually would have been good if they did it right. So this is basically what this is all about, and it's a long story, but the point is the Justice League kind of breaks off in teams of two, and they all have really interesting stories where it's teams of two paired up with a new god. Batman has a really awesome moment, but I don't want to get into that because this isn't Batman month. Every month's Batman month. Okay, I can't just gush over Batman moment in this story. But no, seriously, there's
I appreciate the self-control, Dragon.
Yeah, but here's the important thing though. There was a big moment with John Stewart where And again, we'll get into this a little bit later on with an episode. They kind of adapt this lighter for television. But Jon Stewart, again, without like kind of a get out of jail free card he had in the animated series, Jon Stewart was responsible for the destruction of a planet. He accidentally destroyed a planet, and he felt very, very bad and guilty. He felt unworthy of the ring. And again, it was an accident, but still, he basically.
Now, spoiler alert! In the Justice League one, it turns out to be like an elaborate hoax. But
in this story that's based on was not the case.
Okay, yeah, I was wondering. I bet you that was a censorship thing, right?
Yes, and that's a thing too. Like on Young Justice, there's actually a thing where this character can die and basically can heal herself. And the little gimme is that they can go as violent, and again, because it's on a streaming service too, they can push the boundaries a little bit. They can kill her in the most brutal ways possible, but she comes back to life, so it's fine. But it's brutal. I mean, they kill her off in really gruesome, graphic ways, but she can come back.
Yeah, that's the thing, Dragon. When I first kind of was watching that episode and was putting the pieces together about what was going on, my heart kind of sunk. I was like, "Oh my god, that's like a." And keep in mind, you very much intended to have that as the first episode I watched of the day, and so it's a great sort of like pathos-filled way to start off my Jon Stewart research. You know, kind of a big gut punch, like, "Oh my god, like this guy's like a mass murderer, technically."
Yes, and again, in Cosmic Odyssey was not a get out of jail free card. He was kind of a little cocky in the field, and he got a planet destroyed. Because again, it was like in New Gods, he had a whole bunch of other planets. So again, he got a planet full of people destroyed.
Mm-hmm.
And he and the Martian Manhunter, they were paired up, and the Martian Manhunter essentially there's this huge thing with the Martian Manhunter. Again, he himself lost his whole world, so he doesn't sympathize with GL at all. So he's really kind of like, he's not mad at him, but he's laying on the guilt, man. It's this whole thing where it boils down to a big iconic moment, Tiki, where again Jon Stewart's doubting himself, and he sends the ring away, like if I don't call you back in an hour, seek someone else. And what happens is he's in space. Ring goes flying, and he has a yellow gun. Again, the thing that could kill a Green Lantern, a yellow gun. And he's contemplating suicide with a yellow gun.
I've heard of the yellow gun, but I ain't ever heard of the yellow submarine. I'm sorry.
It's undercutting the severity of contemplating suicide.
I'm sorry. I'm just trying to lighten the mood.
And yeah, there's this really thing where the Martian Manhunter, he said, like, "Hey, I'm not going to stop you." I mean, it's just that's how screwed up that is. My God, and the idea is like Martian Manhunter essentially like it's Green Lantern came to a point where he had to kind of live with the consequences. Like, yes, I destroyed a plan. I'm not going to let you just kind of let me. Basically, kind of perked himself up in a way of like I'm still guilty over that. I'm still guilt-ridden over this, but I can't just like take. Basically, I can't just like end my suffering. I gotta live with this thing now. I gotta go forward with this travesty and this tragedy to my name. And so he kind of resumed being Green Lantern, but he always had that baggage with him. It was some heavy stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And you know what, Dragon? You know what I like about that actually is that it's the kind of thing where it's like we're not idolizing these black characters. You know, we're not like we're not writing them with like the stereotypical flaws that you would associate with a black person, you know, like the crimes and the drugs and all that. But by the same point, this is a character that is very flawed, and he's not like just the the heroic, wise, sage black man. You know what I mean? And I feel like there's something very progressive just in that.
I mean, Jon Stewart, he's a flawed guy, but he's an honest guy. Like, he'll admit his mistakes, and like he's a very honest portrayal. Okay, last thing, and this is important because this coats a lot of the stuff we're going to be talking about here. A big thing, and I'm not like, again, I don't know in the whole history of everything here, but I mean, he had a very iconic interracial relationship in animation. Now, I don't know if it's like I don't want to just be bold enough to say it's like the first time it's ever happened in animation, but it's definitely with superheroes. It might be, and at the very least, it's one of the most iconic interracial relationships.
Oh, I mean, I'd have to shoot. I'd have to go into the. I'm trying to think of. Anyway, it's worth looking up, Dragon. It's worth looking up.
Certainly, but the point is, it's the first. I'm pretty sure it's the first with superheroes, but at the very least, one of the most iconic interracial relationships in animation. So it's really, the relationship he had with Hawkgirl, which is going to be very important.
You know what's funny is that it's not just interracial in the fact that like it's a black and white thing. It's like she's literally like an alien, right?
Yes. So it's even more so. Yeah, she has hawk wings, man. So, just in case you're curious, those don't come off. It's not like again, wings kind of coming out of her body. It's like, those. Here's the thing: you saw like the other
X-Men Angel thing, right?
Yeah, like Hawkman. On the other hand, what we see later, Hawkman's a complicated thing.
Oh man, Hawkman is goofy as shit, man.
Yeah, Hawkman's complicated to say the least, but we'll. And voiced by James Remar, by the way. So Dexter's dad.
God, that's
by the way,
right?
I'm sorry,
Harry from Dexter.
Yes, Harry from Dexter, and who also was on Black Lightning, by the way, in a really great role. So again, he gets around that James Remar. He's done a lot of voices in animation, by the way. It's really great. Anyway, so again, I think it's a good sampling of kind of like the legacy and kind of like the big tent poles of kind of what Jon Stewart's kind of brought to kind of the medium itself. So all that said, let's kind of folks, just to give preface to all this. So again, primarily as I mentioned in the opening, we're really tackling kind of the televised kind of a little bit of movies here and there. Like when we get to certain characters, we might kind of touch on movies a smidge, but really
we have to talk about the cinematic masterpiece that is Steel Dragon.
Well, and technically, some other thing which I don't want to give away quite yet, but yeah, pretty much we might kind of dip a toe into the movies here, but for the most part, we're covering the TV, the TV and the televised entries in these characters' histories, and thankfully with Jon Stewart, that's one of the best animated series ever made with the DC. Well, in one of the best animated universes of television with the DCAU, not the DCEU, the DCAU. The original.
Yeah, having spent the whole day immersed in this stuff, Dragon, man, this puts the movies to shame in terms of continuity.
Yep, and this is why everybody was saying like, "Oh, God, we gotta get Bruce Timm and Paul Dini in the saddle for." Basically, we gotta get the Justice League team in the saddle for the movies, and you see why now.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Okay, so let's again talking about let's kind of break this down. So again, what was your first impression of Jon Stewart when you saw him on the Freaks? Again, I showed you Blackest Night to start things off. Now, Blackest Night was basically the first Green Lantern centric episode that is right after they all team up and they form a team. Like right after that, then you get this episode. So overall, what do you think of Jon Stewart?
Well, I mean, yeah, man. I just kind of illustrated like I love the fact that he's definitely kind of like that stoic, reserved badass, but by the same point, he's flawed and he's very human. And, and this, oh man, the Darkest Night thing is just, like I said, that cold reveal of like, when you put the pieces together about a third of the way through the episode of what's going on. And it's just like, oh, Jesus, like, this is some heavy territory we're dealing with here. So, yeah. So overall, Dragon, just through my crash course, I think he's, like I said, the Green Lantern stuff is very, kind of goes over my head. But this guy is sort of the more Green Lantern in a way. So I don't know. I don't have a ton to say about my reactions to him because I already kind of formulated an opinion on him just based on the history of the character. And I've seen a few clips from him, and I've seen other episodes of Justice League along the way, so it's it's not like I'm totally unfamiliar with the character, but I like what I see, and I definitely respect his place in history.
Right, and like something kind of neat that Justice League introduced that was never in the comics. The eye glow. The eye glow is a cool thing where the eyes never basically has this great thing where when he has the ring on, his eyes glow because he uses the ring so often, and again, he's just so kind of in tune with it, like his. Again, in lieu of a mask, he has the glowing eyes, which kind of shows you like how linked up the guy is with the ring. So that's cool.
Yeah, that was an interesting effect. Yeah.
Yeah, and it was it has a great dynamic with the Flash, which is really fun. Just again, it's still like
I wanted to have time for that Flash episode. I couldn't work it into my schedule today, unfortunately.
Well, again, there's like here's the thing: they're kind of spread out throughout the whole thing. Like they have they're like episodes, even when it's not all about the two of them, but they have a really great dynamic. Like there's this one episode, Tiki, where it's called Eclipse. And Eclipse is not a good episode. However, Eclipsed. It does have this great kind of runner in the two parts where Flash has sponsorship. It's like these great mundane things with a Flash. It has it's like a sponsorship thing where he's trying to get like Lightspeed snacks and and like trying to get like endorsement deals and everything. And also, he what he paid for with his money was a van. He got like a van, like the Flashmobile, which is just this really cheesy van with shag carpeting, and he basically.
No God.
And here's the thing: so he shows John again because he's buddy with Jon Stewart. And, it's the straight man comedian dynamic. That's what they have. And again, it's such a reverse from the Hal Jordan thing we were talking about too, where it's just Flash. Everybody loves the Flash, and we have the straight man when this really no nonsense military Green Lantern, and we have. And we have the Flash, just this lighthearted guy worrying about all these silly things, and played by the wonderful Michael Rosenbaum. Just Phil LaMarr and Michael Rosenbaum's the pair made in heaven, and you have Michael Rosenbaum. just saying like, hey, it's a bachelor pad on wheels, huh? What do you think? He just gives him like, doesn't even give him a response, just raises an eyebrow like, you really are an idiot, like one of those things. Like, why on earth would you get a band like this? And that's pretty much their their dynamic. Like their buddies are always there for each other, but it's like Jon Stewart's always he's always like kind of taking the Flash under his wing to an extent, and then vice versa as like the
how the Flash is he's sort of played as like a non-serious comedic romantic rival to Hawkgirl, like in a way where Hawkgirl would never go for him, but he's kind of trying to put the moves on her a little bit.
Yeah, the neat thing is that in the history of the kind of the arc of the series is that it starts off that way, and kind of by the end, by the kind of the star crust of it all, she's kind of like the older sister in a way. It's kind of strange, but it works. Yeah, like they first meet each other, and over the years they just kind of really become really close, and like she's helping him score dates. It's like it's kind of nice. So it's basically overall there's like the introduction, like he's introduced as a guy who sticks up for his friends, sticks up for people, just kind of the straight man. Usually he's the skeptic of the group. That's usually how it goes, Tiki, where he's the like a new threat presents itself and like, oh, you can trust us, and he's the guy saying, I don't know if we can trust these guys, but he's the honorable hero who just kind of radiates this kind of that this guy knows what he's talking about. I believe in this guy.
Right.
Overall, just kind of after watching all the stuff, like kind of your big takeaway from like, what do you think of the voice? What do you think about Phil LaMarr in the role?
Oh, I mean, Phil LaMarr, of course, is obviously like he's one of my favorite voice actors just in general, Dragon. So I mean, I'm not gonna complain. It's he does a great job. I think he adds a great air of kind of gravitas to the role, but at the same time, a great human quality. And that's the great thing about Phil LaMarr is he can kind of cross those two worlds. He can kind of be that very serious character who has kind of a slight comedic edge to him. And I feel like that's very much what Phil LaMarr's performance illustrates.
Yeah. Yeah, what's kind of cool is that, again, I don't know how Phil LaMarr does it, because again, the guys, if you ever see Phil LaMarr, I once I saw him in person, and again, it's basically lived up all the interview stuff where the guy's really thin, yet again he voices these characters in the way he always kind of explains how he kind of voices these characters, like Jon Stewart. Is you give him like these, because here's the thing, Tiki, he's not only the voice of Jon Stewart, he's also the voice of Static from Static Shock.
Right.
That's the thing. He's like this teenaged kid, but at the same time, he's this rough military man with like this deep. He just plays his characters like big chests, like these big booming diaphragms and voices. And again, I don't know how. And of course, he's also Samurai Jack. It's amazing what he can do.
That reminds me, Dragon. Now that we're on the subject of people playing Jon Stewart, who would you want to see as a live action Jon Stewart?
Oh God, there's I mean, if I could pick, and again, I don't know if he'd be able to do it because again, there's like all weird contractual stuff because he's been on the Green Arrow show, but I like Michael Jai White. That's who I would pick. Spawn. The guy from the Dark Knight, the Gamble from the Dark Knight. That's who I'd pick personally.
Dragon, to me, I think there's one clear choice for Jon Stewart. All right,
is it Terry Crews?
It'd be a redemption arc. Because we already talked about like the dark side of the character.
Just for a fun fact, again, Terry Crews, I'd be
Ja Rule.
You.
No. In all seriousness, I'm sorry. It's just I think the obvious answer is kind of the safe answer. I think Michael B. Jordan would be fantastic.
The other thing, Michael B. Jordan, he's being tossed around for a couple roles these days. Like, a lot of people, I think, go to the Jon Stewart, but a lot of people have been kind of tossing around Steel in light of like this potential Superman news. But I got to tell you, I'd buy him as Steel, and I'd buy
him as Steel. But I'm much more interested in a Jon Stewart Green Lantern movie than I am a Steel movie.
Oh, sure. And believe me, here's the thing. Everybody wants. There's one actor everybody wants. And again, let me be frank. I'm for all these. I think these are all excellent choices. I really do. I'm down for anything. I'm not Ja Rule, obviously, but I'm down for. I'm down for. Look, I'm down for Michael Jai White. Has been the guy I've always thought of in the role. But you have Michael Jai White. You have Michael B. Jordan, who'd be perfect for it as well. But I mean, everybody wants Idris Elba, who again. I mean, he's not.
Idris Elba, yeah.
He's the obvious choice, which he'd be perfect for. But again, and he's kind of let out of his Marvel contract now. So because there's sometimes a casting thing like now they can't do the thing where it's like DC. Basically, Marvel actors can't enter into DC movies. That's part of their contracts. Last I heard, with the whole Disney, that's Disney having a constraint on their contracts. So, like, if they play DC characters, they can be cast in Marvel films, but if they can't get into new DC movies. But again, if he's killed off, contract's over. Therefore,
poor J.K. Simmons and his 2 minutes of screen time.
Yeah, and for all we know, maybe that's a reason he potentially may not have been in the MCU. Perhaps it's unclear.
That's what I'm saying, yeah.
That's from what I understand, and I don't know if that's still true. I know that for a time that was true at the very least. The point being, like, all those guys are excellent pulls. And Terry Crews, I'm just throwing him in the ring because I love Terry Crews. And again, if you have a little bit of comedy, but as well as, again, the severity, and I believe, man, I can't get enough of Terry Crews. So, again, I think those are 4 excellent choices that could work. It's just, I think Terry Crews is a little too buff for the role, but, fine.
And Ja Rule.
Not Ja Rule. No Ja. No Ja. Right. Anyway, the overall. So speaking of the military thing, real quick, I wanted to get into. So one last thing I need that they kind of retcon something with John Stewart. So again, he was an architect from the beginning, but then they wanted to give him a military background, so they made him a Marine, which they worked into the animated show. So they don't spell out the architect thing. For all we know, it could happen. Like he could be an architect on the side, but they never show it. But we do talk about his military things. Basically, what they've done is it's kind of neat what they've done. They kind of worked them both in a retcon. So the idea is that he did become an architect, but he joined the military, joined the Marines to kind of fund his degree in architecture and kind of support his family. So that's what he did there. So that's the history of which again still works, right? Either way, the point is that's why he has a Marine kind of history. And there's an episode where they go back in time to World War II. And yes, they even show Hitler for a brief moment. It's really cool.
Oh dear.
It's like a creepy. Oh well, I don't want to get into it here. The point is, John Stewart. He basically his ring runs. Of course, the ever-present danger of a Green Lantern is he runs out of power in his ring. So basically, he's like joins a little Marine group. He joins a sergeant. Basically, they kind of parody Nick Fury. There was this Sergeant Rock. They do Sergeant Rock and then. They do Sergeant Rock in the gang. I can't remember what the rest of them are, but Sergeant Rock, he runs into like an old World War II DC character from the war times, and he joins them, and we see him kind of back in his Marine days to an extent. It's kind of neat. Anyway, so the point is, what I'm getting with all that is like we show kind of a military man who faces a problem directly. That's kind of the overall take I got from John Stewart. Like he's a guy who, like a military man, he'll just face a problem directly. Like he won't just kind of try to. He's not really. I'm not saying he's not a sly guy. He's a smart guy, but he's smart enough to kind of like he'll go at a problem directly. And also he's just very layered. He's probably the most layered of all the Green Lanterns in terms of like personality, where he's the most fleshed out, I should say. Most fleshed out, and the show there's one episode where you kind of look into it's like a nightmare show where you see what his underlying fear is. Of course, Green Lantern's fear is a big thing, and his fear, very interestingly, is losing his humanity and becoming is he more of like the guy from Earth, or is he more of like a Green Lantern who's seen space, who's kind of become, again, the guy barely takes off the ring as is. So it's kind of a question of, is he still, again, it's like an underlying fear. So it's not like a big, he's not losing sleep over it. But is he becoming more in line with the Green Lantern Corps, or is he kind of like that old Marine who just kind of comes from like a humble neighborhood? Like, is that two sides of himself almost? Again, very interesting layered stuff they've done with John Stewart. Of course, relationship stuff, which we'll break down, and I guess kind of here. So let's talk about the growth. So let's start with Justice League before we get to Unlimited. So Justice League. Overall, just kind of it's a broad spectrum, kind of where they go with them in the show. So like season 1, it's their testing stuff, throwing it against the wall, seeing what works. And the problem was, and they addressed this in the Hearts and Mind episode, Tiki, which again I don't know if you had the fortitude to finish or not. Did you finish it?
Yeah, I finished it. Yeah, I don't know how much of it I really took in.
That's fine because Blue's kind of a forgettable episode, but it's here's the thing: season one of Justice League was plagued with a number of it's a work in progress. Where the three biggest problems.
I'm sorry, I'm going to stop you for just a sec, just to get into kind of like some inside baseball here. So I'm looking at the format. We just finished overall, right?
No, we're on growth and arc right now. I'm sorry. Yes. Sorry. Yes, we did just finish overall. Yeah.
Okay, because the thing is, I'm just kind of trying to track these transitions. Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to look behind the curtain, if you will. I just wanted to make sure we were on the same page. Go ahead.
Yes. Okay. So, season one Justice League with his arc, with his growth, is that that season was plagued with a number of three prominent problems. Tiki, three problems were they had to weaken Superman to the point there was just every electrical shock would knock out Superman. Obviously, there's a problem there. Like every episode, Superman would be. Here's the thing: every episode, two things would happen. Every episode with these two characters were in it, this would happen. Okay, Superman would get knocked out because by something that really should knock Superman of all people out. And the Martian Manhunter, more than Superman, everyone brings up the Superman thing. No one ever brings up the Martian Manhunter thing. I love the Martian Manhunter, so this always bugs me. He's the bigger lightweight. Again, the Martian Manhunter, who's a character who's designed to be basically as powered, almost as powered as Superman, but with the weakness of fire. They never really did the fire thing, but what they did do was that any electric shock, it was always two things: an electric shock, but something psychically. He tries to read a mind or something, and then there's a feedback of I can't read this person's mind. I'm knocked out.
I noticed that just in the episodes I was watching, the Martian Manhunter's weakness was pretty repetitive.
That's the thing. It got on my. Here's the thing: fire is what it's supposed to be, and fire I get, but it's always we have to take him out in some way, shape, or form. Really, it's that's the point. Again, that's because the Martian is such a cool character in that show with that one really ridiculous.
It'd be like if a migraine each time he used his I'm sorry, I was saying it'd be like if Doctor Strange got a migraine each time he looked into the future.
And that's the thing; they have to weaken him because otherwise the show would be over in 2 minutes. And that's why the Flash isn't as fast as he is on the TV show we have now. That's the thing; they have to kind of hold them back a little bit. But they're in the first season was really bad, is what I'm saying. Season 2 got a whole lot better. So the point is, Jon Stewart was the third in that triangle there. Where Jon Stewart, he wasn't creative with the ring, and of course, as I mentioned, the reason he was picked for the ring, creative guy. And Hearts and Minds kind of caught Matui, his teacher, the one that taught him everything he knows, kind of point out, really, it's always bubbles with you. It's always beams and bubbles. What's your problem? It's and of course, he's creating constructs and all the cool stuff. Basically, the only really cool thing the Green Lantern has going for him is that he makes all these really neat, kind of constructs and everything.
Right.
And I guess let's talk about now the Justice Guild. We kind of got into a little bit of Jon Stewart's background the first season. That was cool.
Yeah, man, this was one of my favorite episodes, dude. This was almost kind of I'm not going to say it's perchance to dream levels, but especially that point where they visit the museum and the books are all empty. That's straight out of perchance.
And that's what I'm talking about, T. The big thing you got to give the first season is that it has these personal moments with Jon Stewart where we learn, he was he read comics and that kind of put him on the path, and we saw him walking in his old neighborhood. I love that scene in Blackest Night. That's when he's just walking through the neighborhood, he meets his old high school teacher, and he's playing basketball. He stops a robber. That's awesome to me. That's if there were ever a Jon Stewart
show. Luke Cage to me, because not just because of the barbershop, which was the obvious Luke Cage thing, but just because of it just felt so there's good old Luke Cage walking down Harlem, and everyone knows who he is, and he's just he's like a public folk hero.
Yeah. So then we get to season 2, and season 2 is really, again, it was there in season 1, but season 2 is when things really pick up with the Hawker relationship. So let's talk about that a little here. So of course, obviously, the big how the whole thing culminates in for season 2, the big star-crossed of it all.
Yeah.
So what are your thoughts on the whole relationship with Hawkgirl and where that goes?
I mean, Starcrossed was at first it was just, they were a good, a good couple who had some good back and forth will they, won't they tension with each other. And, it's all nicely played and everything. But, yeah, holy crap, man, Starcrossed. Let me just say, dude, this would be a good point for a Justice League movie. Just because there's personal tension involved with the story, right? Like it's like the opposite of Steppenwolf.
Iggy, for years, people have saying the exact same thing, and now you're kind of baptized into the consensus, man. Like, yep, we've all been saying it for years. Star-crossed. It's like, again, basically, and people have basically there have been some DVD releases where they basically take out like kind of the separators, and it's like it plays like a big movie, kind of like World's Finest. You remember the World's Finest Batman Superman thing? Kind of plays like that, where it's like, yeah, this is how it should be. Why can't we do that?
Right.
It's an invasion story. Like for me, I'm always arguing Starro, but still,
like it's just a cartoon, right? It's just like a Saturday morning cartoon. But I was watching this and I was like so invested in it, and it felt so larger than life to me, just because of the personal stakes involved.
Absolutely, and again, they find like the episode before is basically it's the end of the will they won't they in the beginning of the relationship. They actually share the kiss for the first time, and the big unmasking scene. The big unmasking scene, of course, is the first time we see her green eyes. It's a beautiful thing. We have this really prolific conversation. Well, we'll get into that a little bit later with something else. I'll talk about the unmasking scene a little bit later on. But the point is they're together, and then right after that, then we have the big. It's a time jump. Like probably a month has gone by or something. They've been kind of like being all cutesy and romantic. And of course, the minute that happens, Invasion and the Thanagarians come back and they take over. And we reveal that Hawkgirl the whole time. And they had this plan from the beginning, by the way. They always knew they were going this route. Yeah, I'm not sure if they knew how big the relationship was going to get, but they always knew Hawkgirl was going to betray the team. They knew that much. So Hawkgirl was a spy. She was basically, we knew she was a Thanagarian cop. We knew that much. So basically, she was undercover and essentially preparing for an invasion, unbeknownst to everybody else. And obviously, that's a big blow to find. Like the woman you kind of fall in love with.
Well, I mean, not just the fact that she's a spy, but like, oh, hey, here's this guy who it's like what's the word, Dragon? It's like I know she directly.
Betrothed.
It's like, yeah, it's like we're engaged.
They're betrothed.
Yeah, right. And it's just, I mean, that's like the real slap in the nuts right there, Dragon. It's like not the betrayal thing, but like, oh yeah, by the way, there's this guy, that from before you, where it's like, we're destined to be together. It's no biggie.
Okay, a little fun fact, and I was afraid about this. I think this is why I emphasized you watch that other kind of setup for the Hawkman stuff, is that a lot of people sometimes confuse that this guy, Rogue Talic, her fiance, was Hawkman. He was not Hawkman. I hope you piece that together.
No, I got that he wasn't Hawkman. Hawkman's a freaking crazy person.
Well, yeah. Look, here's the thing. It's like it's kind of. We'll get to him. The point is Rogue Talic. The problem was they wanted to make this guy Rogue. They wanted to make this guy Hawkman because again they tried to redeem him as much as they can. You see the guy has some. He's trying to save his planet, but at the cost of another planet. But again, it basically would have the Earth would have been technically would have been fine, but it would have been turned into a Route 66 essentially. That's what he wanted to do. The planet turn the Route 66.
So basically, Star Wars Galaxy's Edge.
Well, pretty much a bypass, but yeah. Essentially, that was what he was trying to do. And so the idea they tried to humanize him. The idea was basically DC shut him down. That no, you cannot make Hawkman into a bad guy.
So we're gonna make him into a crazy person instead. That's gonna be much better for the character.
Yeah, but he is kind of fresh, though. I mean, if you do Hawkman, it's like it's kind of refreshing in a way. But I don't know. Okay, the point is,
you and I are just reincarnated Egyptian lovers. What of it?
I'm gonna blow your mind with some stuff when we get there, but okay. The point is, so she's engaged, and now she's engaged to the head honcho. Again, if you're not threatened, I mean, who wouldn't be threatened by that? He's a giant hawk guy. So it's again the relationship is so touching and natural, and ends in such a betrayal. And again, he's very threatened by this, and ends up with a really big battle against John Stewart, kind of fighting this guy, fighting Rogue Talic again. And of course, here's the thing that's fascinating about John Stewart. Again, there's such a complex number of feelings going on in the guy's head. Again, I love how you can read into it, like how the guy's feeling. Because again, he's acting very. Again, he's a hero, of course. So he's getting the job done. He's going to save the world, and of course, he has to trust her. But he has to trust a woman who basically kind of stabbed him in the heart. Really, he has to put his trust in her. Like she gives him the ring back to kind of help save the day. And the guy takes a beating, and again, primarily takes a beating because he was kind of philandering on the guy's fiance, but she didn't tell him. So it's a complex number of emotions. We'll get into some specificity on that a little bit later on, but yeah, it was, and by the end they're kind of broken up, and it's a really sad breakup.
Yeah, yeah.
So then we get the Justice League Unlimited. So again, so Hawkgirl, she literally kind of.
Dragon, I'm sorry. Can you set the stage for Justice League Unlimited? Like, what's the deal with that? Is it a completely new show? Is it just like a subtitle to seasons, or what?
Well, the idea was, and I think I've told you this before, especially when we were talking about Steven Universe. So you know me, I kept hyping.
Yeah, I know you told it to me before. I just kind of wanted on the record as we go through this DCU stuff.
Well, sure, but to give it context, like so Star-Crossed. So season one, they knew they were good to go for season two. But season one performed so well, they were instantly given a go ahead for season two. Hence the whole Hawkgirl payoff. So the idea was, however, season two they had no idea if they were coming back, so they ended big. And again, they literally blew it. Batman doing that awesome. I'm sorry, I'm just refraining from the Batman talk. The point is, Batman saves the day with the Watchtower in an awesome way. That moves me profoundly, but we're not going to get into that. As long as he saves the
day. I appreciate the restraint, Dragon. I really do.
He saves the day, and he blows up the Watchtower. And well, again, like you blew up the big set piece of the show, the Watchtower. What are we going to do next? So you see them like literally, and they kicked Hawkgirl off the team. It's the whole. So again, you can see like it's end of the series type stuff, and it's a really
yeah.
If you never saw another episode of Justice League, like wouldn't that be like if I told you that was the finale to the whole thing, wouldn't you be satisfied with that?
Yeah, and not knowing anything about Justice League, if you would have told me that, I would have absolutely believed you without question.
That's the thing. So the idea is basically they got picked up, and there was like an oh no moment, like oh wow, what do we do now? Well, we do it better. Okay.
So basically, it's like a Steven Universe situation. Like shit, we've reached the point where this storyline, by all intents and purposes, should wrap up.
Yes, but Tiki, this is before that became a bad thing. This is when you have the right people in charge and they know exactly what they're doing, where they're still, again, you also have like decades and decades of comics to also kind of fall back on. So they were a lot better covered than an original concept. It's just kind of like, again, kind of reaching the logical end of its story. So that's what Steven Universe is contending with. Justice League, though, again, they had stuff to get through, but they had to kind of figure out like a different structure for it. So that's when we get to Justice League Unlimited, where, okay, there's like a whole catalog, a whole like infinite library of DC characters that we haven't even introduced yet. So let's bring them in. And that's essentially what the idea was. It was like at least 52 new characters. And I know how apropos, new 52, and of course 52 being the big number. And the reason 52 is a big number in DC is because it's 52 weeks within a year for like the weeks of which a comic comes out, hence the gag. Point being, so Justice League was like 52 additional reserve members. Basically, people would go off in teams, and they rebuilt the Watchtower even bigger. Not just one Watchtower, be a number. I think there's like a number of Watchtowers, but at the very least, there's one big Watchtower where they all intermingle. And that was basically, they rebranded it, but it's the same show. It's like what Batman did when they only without it's not a redesign, just it has better rendering. It has like basically the animation looks even better with Justice League Unlimited. It's like better rendering and some new like cosmetic changes. Like Jon Stewart now has like a goatee and a shaved head, like that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's the same show. It's just like it's literally what happens after. It's like the direct continuation of what happens on it. Maybe a little bit of time has passed. And now they have built the Watchtower. Now they've kind of put the call out to a whole bunch of heroes.
Maybe to make a comparison, it maybe is like a little bit like Dragon Ball to Dragon Ball Z.
You know what? That's actually not as big a time jump, but yeah, sure.
Okay, gotcha.
Like no one has any kids, but yeah.
Yeah, I hear you.
Or maybe 2 years, or maybe that much. I don't know. The point is, but yes. So Justice League Unlimited, it came in.
But it's technically a different timeline, and it's a rebranding.
It's the same. I mean, it's the same universe, same timeline. Too. That's the thing. All the DCAU.
Well, I mean, it's a different point in the timeline.
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. The DCAU is all like all the stuff within DCAU is like all within the same. Like there's no weird stuff in the comic. It's all like it all fits into the same thing. So, let's see. So, okay, so we get the JLU. So we get the JLU, and with John, he's finding himself after the breakup, and he's found someone else in Vixen, who is a great character, which we might cover one of these days. We ever do like an all-female, Black History Heroes thing. Hello.
Yeah. I'm here.
I just want to make sure you're there. Sorry. yeah. So we have Vixen. Vixen. Like you saw a little bit of Vixen, right?
Yeah, to be honest, I didn't get much out of her beyond like, oh, she's the girl that John's dating who's not Hawk Girl and tension, but she seemed pleasant.
Yeah, she's nice, voiced by the lovely Gina Torres, and she has like the ability to. She has that necklace. She has like an ancient. She has some great backstory, which we're not going to get into here. But the idea is Vixen. She can summon the power of any animal,
Oh, okay.
which is really cool power, by the way, and how they do it. So
Mhm.
like she keeps her same form, but like she can touches like the necklace, and she thinks like gorilla, or she thinks snake or boa constrictor, and she can
Is there
strangle
anything
them.
that I saw in these episodes that would have actually indicated that dragon? Because I got nothing from
Well,
that.
yes, you saw ancient history, right?
Yes.
Then yes, that would have indicated it to you. But again, it's
Okay, the thing is with ancient history, I like what that episode did stylistically. I just wasn't sure how much of it was actually real.
well, the stuff before we got into that questionable space that you saw it there. So she was fighting
Yeah,
the
yeah,
guy.
okay, fair
She
enough,
used her
fair enough.
power.
Okay.
Okay, anyway,
I,
so the point is he's found someone nice, and again, Vixen is true. Like, there's nothing to listen. Like, Vixen's a great choice. If he's ever going to meet somebody, Vixen is a solid choice.
uh,
And yeah, of course, then and the idea, and as you saw in the return, Hawkgirl comes back. She left the team, and she basically went to find herself with Dr. Fate in the gang. And you know that guy, but
that's a great band name right there, Dragon. Dr. Fate and the Gang.
Dr. Fate, he kind of put together a little team of kind of mystics and powerful people, and like the android. Basically, the android is part of the team. The guy who's kind of like Dr. Manhattan.
Right, right.
So the idea is like she comes back after the return. Hence the reason they called it the return. It's not only the return of the androids, the return of Hawkgirl.
Or
the
the
Shire.
Return of the King, or the Return of the Jedi.
Yeah.
Or the movie The Returned.
Of course. So she comes back, and there's two major complications. One, the fact that she comes back and he's with somebody else, and again they're in different places, and he's moved on. But again, there's like a lingering like he's been thinking about it, but he's convincing himself he's happy, even though he has some regrets. Because again, he still loved her by the end of Starcross. He did. But again, moved on because he had to, and no one will blame him. But then, of course, he finds out big shock, and I love this moment. I can't get enough of this moment. He learns that he goes to the future in one of the really great episodes of Justing Unlimited.
Dragon, this episode reminded me of when Heroes was briefly good.
I mean, tell me once in a future.
Remember when Heroes was good, Dragon?
Yeah, it was about. I know it was the first season was about 2.5 seasons. That was when it was good, right? At least 2 seasons.
Oh God, no! Season 2 was a train wreck. Season 3 was all over the place. I honestly, Dragon season 1 was the only good hero season as far as I'm concerned.
But here's the thing: season 2, I have fond memories of season 2, with the exception.
And even season 1, there's goofy shit like "Are you on the list?" So season 1's not even perfect.
I mean, here's the thing: season 2, I just kept the big thing that keeps jumping at me every month. It's been years since I've watched 3 years. I still never finished Heroes. I watched like 3.5 seasons of.
Oh, me neither. God no.
my point is like they broke up the 3rd season like hero and villain. I got through the hero part of it. I didn't get through the villain part. That doesn't matter. The point is season 2 of Heroes, without being far off track here, but they have the Siler stuff and the whole like with the I believe like the immigrants.
Yeah.
I didn't like he's going across like they're basically building. They're taking a long time to build up the Siler stuff. Like
that side plot was so slow. Anyway, we're getting way off track.
Yes. Okay. Getting back on point here, Mr. Heroes is seriously once in a future thing was a great episode. Wasn't.
And that's what I'm saying. That's what this reminds me of. The whole, it's like I love how Heroes builds that gradual progression of like, okay, we see future hero, and then bam, we're in the future universe, man. We're there.
Yes, and when we go to the future, not only do we have, I think it's awesome. We get Batman Beyond, we get Static Shock. Oh, sorry, we
have old Bruce Wayne, man, old man Bruce.
Yep, and of course,
I love 60-year-old Static Shock.
Yeah, oh man, it's a great design too. I love the design. And because they perfected that design, because you saw like an older Static Shock, and then they basically made him look even cooler with Justice League. So they basically retake the design. It looks far better. And then of course we have Warhawk. Now again, as you can probably tell by that Warhawk, I wonder who his mother is. Vixen? No. It's Shire, and we have this beautiful moment. I believe it's the believe it's the end of the first part. And this is like a thing about how great a cliffhanger. I think it's the end of part 1 where this happens. They basically get pulled out into the future, and we have this moment where they're kind of attacked by the Joker's gang, and then everybody shows up, and we have Warhawk show up, and they kind of help out for a moment, and John Stewart gets kind of knocked on his butt for a second there, and Warhawk says, "Dad." And we have this great, like this kind of this choir moment. Again, it's just like they have choirs in it's almost Shirley Walker's influence on the show and the series and everything. Where the idea is like they would have it's like a choir, but like a soft revelation choir without like the I don't know, it's a great resonant sound of like a big dawning moment. And you see his reaction chills me, man. I love that reaction, like just like the shock of like I was just moved past Shire. What? It's great. So yeah, he finds out he has a son, and basically there's a roundabout way of getting to the big kind of ancient history of it all, where John Stewart is a guy who where he doesn't want to be Destiny's puppet. He wants to kind of make his own future. He doesn't want to. Now he knows something about the future, which he, being a Green Lantern, he knows like to be wary of time travel. And he now knows something really detrimental to his future. He knows that he has a son, and it's very easy to tell. Again, visually, it's very easy to tell who the mother is. In Shira, and he's in trouble because right now he's with Vixen, and now he's got like a big choice to make because he has some feelings for Shira, but by the same token, so again, the point is he's got to we keep adding this is what we're going to with the John Stewart thing from earlier on. And the guy has these tremendous complex layers to him, and I think he makes a really reasonable choice where he doesn't want to be Destiny's puppet, but I think it's pretty apparent that there's going to be reconciliation in the future, even if you didn't know the Warhawk. I think that he's still got a lot of feelings for Shire. They shared something really special, right?
For sure.
And broadly beyond that, like the last thing I can really get is he's kind of an idol for young heroes like Static, because there's like an episode whenever we get the Static Tiki at some point down the line. Static, there's an episode where he meets John Stewart, and the idea is John Stewart is like the premier kind of icon, kind of iconic black hero to any hero within the DC animated universe. So Static, obviously, again, being a hero is kind of like kind of starting off. It's like if Spider-Man met, like Spider-Man coming across maybe Captain America or at the very least Iron Man. It's like kind of coming across your hero, and it kind of goes like that. Hence the reason he and Static have some history, like Static, because they've met each other before. Pretty much, it's pretty much kind of the overall arc of John Stewart. He's kind of on the path of kind of recovery and resilience. It sounds like a elongated soap opera. But that's pretty much what it is with John Stewart. But I got to tell you, folks, I hate soap operas, and the CW shows and these are like the best soap operas I can find. These are the soap operas I respect for soap operas where it's just like poorly shot. It's got terrible music. Anyway, I don't want to go on a rant.
Writing is just atrocious.
Yeah, it's like there's always an evil twin.
Writing makes you feel like you're in a Kmart.
Yep. Well, I've never heard that comparison, but yeah, I would agree. It does make you feel like you're in a Kmart. That's really accurate. Anyway, so again, we were talking. So that's pretty much the history of John Stewart in the DCAU. So again, Tiki, now you've kind of had a solid sampling of John Stewart stuff. Let's talk about some defining moments. I think it can be comics or whatever. In the grand whole of things, Tiki, what are some defining moments you'd like to talk about that really kind of ring true, no pun intended, ring true to you about?
I mean, I got to be honest with you, Dragon. A lot of them we've already talked about. I mean, shall we talk about that one that you made me? I shouldn't say you made me watch it, but the one that you had me watch right before we went on, the big hot girl moment.
Yeah, sure, that's a big one. That's what one of the big iconic things with him. Where we have this we have the big unmasking of Hawkgirl scene. Where the thing that touches me about that scene, Tiki, is this dialogue he has where he basically, the two of them had feelings for each other, and they've always been kind of like, will they, won't they, touch and go sort of things, where they obviously like each other, but they haven't quite taken the leap. And this near-death experience has gotten them open their eyes to this. And basically, she's kind of, again, this is fascinating given what happens in Starcross, Tiki, if you really think about it. She's trying to talk him out of the relationship, and we know why now. She's trying to talk him out of the relationship because she's engaged, because she has all this other stuff going on.
Right.
But at the same time, it's just such a sweet scene where he's saying, all I see, and again, as he removes best, is a man and a woman who love each other. And it's
Dragon, that is like, goddamn, that is such a universal, just like breaking barriers line right there, and I love it.
It leads to a very iconic interracial kiss. It's kind of what it leads to. Even the speciesist, whether you want to get the whole alien theology, but that's the point. It's a big moment. Again, one of the big iconic Green Lantern moments in the whole series. Everybody loves it. Like, it's a good moment. What's about anything in Blackest Night really jump out to you? Because I was going to bring up something from that.
Well, I mean, like I said, I keep going back to just the moment of realizing. Oh, well, yeah, actually, one big thing is the the ending where the Green Lantern Corps is like, well, gee, sorry, John, we should have believed you. And John's like, yeah, you should have. And then he goes to the Justice League and he's like, you guys believed me even when I didn't believe in myself. That struck a chord with me. That touched me.
That is beautiful, and that again. This is why we're talking about it right now. These are the moments that define this character, man. These are the moments that show. He tells it as it is, and if you turn on him, he won't forgive you. At least not easy in the case of Shira. But again, if you're in his corner, like we had this beautiful moment with him in the Flash, Tiki, where again the Flash is kind of his goofy buddy, but at the same time, the Flash again was the most vocal voice of like defending John Stewart blindly. He kind of ran up to be his lawyer. Very ill. He's no Jimmy McGill, to say the least. He's no Saul Goodman, no Jimmy McGill on the stand. He's just, as we learn, Tiki, and I imagine this will be the case even with the CW show right now. The Flash is a terrible lawyer. He would make a terrible lawyer. And as we see, he's just vamping for he's trying to filibuster. He's trying to filibuster the trial, which is a space trial, which doesn't even work like a regular trial. So he's just. So it's all ridiculous. And of course, but he did that knowing that he would share the fate fate of death if he bombed the trial. And again, that's a brave thing to do. And again, like he was there for his buddy even when he didn't believe in himself. That's truly it's remarkable. The thing that gets me about that, the thing I keep going back to with that episode is the big revelation where. Again, one, they reworked the tragedy, which was kind of neat. The idea is knowing that this is kind of based on a really big, prolific thing. And it's kind of played. I like that we do. Again, we exonerate John, but still, by the same token, it's like he's really responsible in how he accepts that. Yeah, I destroyed a plan. He's feeling really guilty about it. Again, kind of like it has a lot of strength to it,
Mm-hmm.
And the thing that I love is this big moment with Kanjar Row where. It's a vanity thing, but I just love it. Kanjar Row, who by the way is voiced by Kurtwood Smith.
It's funny because the voice sounded familiar, but I couldn't quite place it.
And it's cool. They worked him as a different character in the first episode of the Green Lantern animated series, which is also on the streaming service. So it's a good role. It's an even better role there. But the point is, Kanjar Row, he's just like he basically framed him up. He's working for the Manhunters. He basically made it look like he supplied the thing that made it look like he destroyed the planet. And we have this great bit of John Stewart. He finds this out, and he's the guy's been rolling with this. Like he's accepted his fate and his punishment because he believed that he basically shot a rogue beam that hit a volcano that destroyed the planet.
Oh.
And he just jumps. He just tackles. It's Phil Lamar with that great voice. He tackles Kanjar Row. He says, "You weasel!" It's like, "You lying weasel!" He's about to beat the living tar out of him because again, he's like, "You set me up." It's like, oh god, it's a great moment. Oh. But the serious note, Justice Guild, the whole
yes. Oh my god.
Tell me, I'm eager to
get John. That's real enough for me.
Yes.
That might be my favorite Hawk Roll moment, Dragon. That might be my favorite John Stewart Hawk Roll moment.
I did notice something. I was rewatching these episodes, Tiki. And I've gotten soft in my old age because there were a couple of moments. There were two moments that just made me actually well up because I thought they were so beautiful. One with Legends. Here's the thing: Legends is that's what they call the Justice Guild. Legends. It's a goof. Here's the thing: first watch, it's kind of like way back when I first watched. I was like, "What the heck is this?" Of course, years later, you find the resonance and the idea of like it's so beautiful that John Stewart. We learned that comics inspired him on some level to be a hero in real life. And we know he went on to be a Marine and, of course, be a Green Lantern, and that's kind of beautiful. Again, these heroes, again, essentially they wanted to do the actual. See, what they wanted to do, Tiki, was they wanted to do the actual Justice Society, which was like the original ones from the 40s. Like you had the original Green Lantern, who was in this case they reworked as Green Guardsman. It's like an homage. They couldn't clear it, so they homaged it as best they could with the original guys. Like they couldn't do Jay Garrick like on the Flash. They doesn't matter. The point is, what they did is, so this guy's like, this very Green Lantern-esque hero kind of inspired him. It's kind of like, fate kind of, taking a role years later.
Uh,
And that in itself was so beautiful. And the idea, like he's making it personal. His Uncle James had a comic collection, which is kind of nice. And then of course, the thing that gets me is like when the illusion disperses itself, and like his Justice Guild ring. It's like one of those things you'd like, the old Captain America tin. Like you'd send like 50 cents or something in, and you or like some box tops or something, and you get the collectible thing from the comic, like the collectible pin or the collectible badge. And he had like a little ring. Again, the guy who wears a ring all the time has like a Justice Guild of America ring. And it disappears, and he sees the heroes disappear. It's a chilling moment where they all disappear. It's like, oh god, look! It's like, it's your heroes and this fading away, and it's like this whole disaster zone of a place.
Can we go through the Justice Guild really quick because they're all so ridiculous?
Sure. I mean, do you remember the names? I remember most of them.
Well, the main one I remember is Catman.
Yeah, Catman is definitely kind of an Adam West pull there.
I'm also very fond of Sportsman from the evil side of things.
Yep, definitely based on Sportsmaster. Michael McKean's, I believe Michael McKean plays the Sportsmaster. He plays one of them. I'm pretty sure he's the Sportsmaster.
Uh-huh.
And I remember Tom Turbine. Tom Turbine's kind of cool. Like, he has the belt and everything. He's basically like Superman if he were a physicist.
Oh,
that's cool. Anyway, the Streak. That's what I was blanking on the Streak. So we have the Streak. Yeah, the guy who's basically Flash with the helmet. That's like he salutes John before he disappears into nothingness.
It's pretty much like a take on the original design for the Flash, right?
That's the thing. He's kind of based. He's wearing a helmet, but it's not like Jay.
Yeah.
They're all based on those early, the very first permutation of the Justice League. That's what they're all. Justice Society. That's what they're all based on. And at the end of the episode, they have this beautiful thing. And this also gets me well up to after that moment you highlighted with the whole they're real enough. They're real enough to me. Right after that moment, I don't know if this gets me or if just that moment gets me, but it's Gardner Fox. Gardner Fox was I believe the editor, if not the writer, behind all of those things. Again, all of that era of comics is based on Gardner Fox. Like Gardner Fox and Julius Schwartz, they're responsible for a lot of the big stuff in DC Comics, and it touches me. Like the whole episode was a tribute to Gardner Fox. I thought that was beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. There's this running gag where John Stewart, he himself gets weepy at Old Yeller, and it's a really simple joke. Teak. It's like the idea, like Yellow is.
Let's face it, Dragon. Who doesn't get weepy at Old Yeller?
But I love the obvious joke. You know why it's Old Yeller, don't you?
Why?
Well, yellow is a Green Lantern's weakness, and what they did is they never directly did the yellow as a weakness in the show, but they kind of had a few nods to it. There were 2 nods in the whole series to it, where Old Yeller is his weakness.
Oh God!
And Flash once threw yellow. Basically, it's like yellow gelatin, like like the yellow pineapple, little fruit cup. Yellow fruit cup at him, and it burst through the the bubble he was creating to protect himself, and it like pied him in the face. It was like the only 2 times they've ever done it, but it's kind of been cool both times. All right, so a really cool moment from really one of the go-to things I think of when I just think of like a line that John Stewart has is from The Return, where let's talk about The Return for a second, man. The Return, what did you think of that one?
It was solid. Again, it had maybe a little bit too much like dense sci-fi mythology for my taste.
Well, sure. I mean, like the big thing about the beginning, where Oa gets essentially, I think Oa gets destroyed, and again, that's a big story for him. Again,
for sure.
That's what I'm getting at. Is like the Green Lanterns have an axe to grind this episode, big time. They're all just kind of they have a vengeful thing against the android who destroyed their big kind of mecca of a planet, and we have this big moment where they're trying to stop this unstoppable thing in the android, and John Stewart he cues up the line because he's harboring a lot of anger towards this guy. Light him up! Just the light him up thing. Like that's what's one again. The Green Lantern, the light. The guy is literally a light. It's just like
light him up. There's a ridiculous Lost reference that's literally word for word light him up, but I won't bore you with the details.
It's just it's the perfect it's the perfect go-to line. It's like the perfect battle cry for the Green Lantern. I love it. There was some stuff I could bore you with, like the whole Rex Mason friendship, but again, that was the whole that was an episode I don't think we got to. But it's not. The point is, like, he had a nice friendship with a guy who basically kind of had a tragedy befall him. Kind of like
that's another episode I wanted to look into, but again, I just I watched 8 episodes or 7 episodes as it was, and time just got the better of me. So
sure, but let me see. Okay, just two. I got two major two big ones left. Really small moments, but they're really star-crossed. Okay. At the very ending of Starker, this is the thing that really got me weepy, more than the Gardner Fox thing. This is the thing where Tiki, I swear to God, it's Phil Lamar's performance, like one of the most beautiful, subtle performances he's ever given, and it's this one line where it's where Hawkgirl, he asks, like, was any of it ever real? And she says, yes, John. Basically, she says something along the lines of, it was real, John. I never lied about how I felt about you. I love you, Jon Stewart. And she flies away into the sunset. It's a beautiful Gone with the Wind shot. It's gorgeous. And this is the thing that kills me. Jon Stewart, after he's been beaten the crap out of in saving the day, the guys helped save the day big time. And this is the beautiful thing about the whole Hawkgirl Jon Stewart dynamic with the Starcrossed is the fact that the love that these two shared saved the planet. That's really beautiful. I mean, the fact that seriously, their love saved the planet.
No. I get you.
And then basically pays off, and this thing just makes me weepy as the day is long. Where it's Phil Lamar giving this one line read where he's been beaten and everything. He sees her fly off after she says that it's kind of like the last. For all he knows, it's the last time. And for us, the audience too. Again, if the show never came back, it's the last thing we ever would have seen from her in the whole show. He says, like, in this really quiet way.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of like the ending of Teen Titans a little bit.
The end. Sorry, when you say the ending of Teen Titans, you mean the animated show, right?
Yes.
Oh.
Because I forget the character, but isn't there? I believe the last episode of Teen Titans, that one episode where the one like Beast Boy's girlfriend,
right? Tara, yes.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Where she goes through that big transformation. That's what I'm thinking of.
Right. Yes. Yeah, I got you. Okay, I got you. Yeah, it's a good comparison. Yes, it is kind of like that. Yeah, but this is like, oh my God, just that quiet way he says, "I love you too," and you see him well up, and it's like, oh God, it's like so heartbreakingly beautiful, man. It's just, again, it's like it's that intricate cell. Like, again, you can see. Here's the thing that's underestimated. Like, since Andrea Romano is retired, but this is like the types of performances she could get out of people. Like, whenever you hear Kevin Conroy do a performance of Batman now, sometimes it can vary, but again, you get the best out of those actors with Andrea Romano in the booth directing them. And this is like one of those times where it probably took a bunch of takes just to get it just right for the whole. I love you too. And oh God, it's a beautiful way to end the season. It really is. And I guess
a better comparison is it's probably like the iconic "I love you" scene from Star Wars.
That's the better comparison. Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely what it is. And I guess the last thing, but if I ever had to have one big go-to, but I don't know why, but my big go-to with Jon Stewart, one of the great lines kind of sums up who this guy is. Again, he's a very human guy, but by the same token, he is a Green Lantern. He's a guy who's kind of seen the universe in a way, but by the same token, he's seen the universe, but he's still he was an Earthman. Where it's at the end of it's the big climax of Once in the Future thing, where Kronos, the Kronos, the bad guy, the time traveling bad guy.
Yeah.
He's trying to go see the beginning of time, and it's Green Lantern and Batman. As close as I'm going to get to talking about Batman the whole thing. Okay, so Green Lantern and Batman. And I love this pairing because I love these two characters together. It's great. They're basically paired up to save the day, and I love for story reason these are the only two who get to know what goes on. They they're paired up, and they have to stop Kronos from seeing the beginning of time. We have this epic line, one of those epic lines I've ever heard Jon Stewart say, and I think it's why it's always stuck with me. It's this great line where it says, "There's a Green Lantern legend that no man can ever see the beginning of time. It's like galactic. I'm trying to think what it's a something law. It's a natural law or something. It's a law. You can't see the beginning of time." And Batman says this great retort, says, "Then write him a ticket." But seriously, it's just like the epicness. I'm not doing any justice here. I feel a little bad for
it.
it. It's the beginning of life. Like Green Lantern law is you can't see the beginning of time. It just sounds like such a regal. Like, again, this is what his whole life is revolved around, kind of honoring these bigger than life laws. Just as an ordinary guy from as I've seen at the very beginning. Think about the very beginning of Justice League. He's just a guy walking through a neighborhood that he grew up in. Again, he's a regular guy like anybody. Grew up in a neighborhood. And he's like stopping someone from seeing the beginning. Yes, and he's just seeing the guy. And he's stopping a guy from seeing the beginning of time. I mean, think of how mind blowing that is.
That is a very high concept idea, Dragon, that I can actually get behind for sure.
Yes, and we glazed over just before we get to the end of things here. We can cover it if you want to. Did you want to talk about the crazy Hawkman stuff? I think
sure. Why not? Why not? I mean, I don't know. I mean, look, Dragon, Ancient History was a good episode and a decent payoff to the bonkers storyline that this is, but man, it was crazy. It's pretty.
Now, here's the crazy thing about it, Tiki. So all that stuff, all that Hawkman stuff in both episodes you saw, because he pretty much just had 2 episodes. But again, they're really comprehensive 2 episodes. Like all of this, again, it does pay off. The whole it kind of hits three buttons. You introduce Hawkman, you introduce Shadow Thief for the whole ancient history of it all. And you have the Hawkgirl knows that she has a son. We have that beautiful ending with her and Batman where she says, "Tell me about my son." Oh, God, it's hard.
Oh, that's, yeah. That's another just fucking excellent ending for sure.
And again, because he and Batman are the only ones to remember what happened when they time travel, which is awesome that Batman remembers time traveling to the future. It's kind of neat. It does raise a bit of a logic hole, which I'm not going to get into, but it's not really. It's like, wait a minute. Yeah, there's a little bit of a plot hole there, but who cares? It was the beginning of time, man. But yeah, so the thing is, they used Hawkman had a number of really good stuff from Jeff Johns. Jeff Johns, the writer, is kind of bringing some of the great, the Aquaman, kind of the new stuff we're doing in the DCU, like the Aquaman stuff and the Shazam stuff and the Earth One Batman stuff. That's Jeff Johns stuff.
Okay, I have a question. Is just speaking of Aquaman, just because he's a big hot topic character right now.
Yeah.
What's his involvement with the Justice League stuff? Like, does he have anything to do?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because it actually does correlate to John Stewart a smidge.
Okay.
Okay. So what happened was, so Aquaman, again, basically they had a big decision, and again, this plays into something in the Hawkman episode too, where the idea is
wasn't Martian Manhunter the Aquaman stand-in or something like that?
No, he was always an original member, Tiki.
Okay, sorry.
Here's the thing: so Aquaman was in place of Hawkgirl. Now, they made a decision.
Okay.
They made a decision to again. They wanted to kind of like not just have one girl on the team, so they kind of came up with Hawkgirl. They kind of like were going from the vast arcus. They could have gone Hawkman, but they didn't. Went with Hawkgirl.
I'm glad they didn't go Hawkman.
Exactly, but here's the thing: if they'd gone Hawkman that early on, it probably would have been a much simpler take on, much more like just the guy with hawk wings. Pretty much would have been.
Now, if they would have gone with Michael Keaton's Birdman.
Okay, anyway, so they made a decision for Hawkgirl, which a lot of people really kind of cried foul at initially before they got to know her, because what do you mean? Like Aquaman's been around. Bear in mind, this is still the point where Aquaman's the fish guy, but by the same token, you had the good Aquaman in the comics at that time, the Peter David Aquaman that informs what we get with Jason Momoa and stuff.
Yeah.
But the point is, and that's by the way, that's the version they went with. They went with the Peter David Aquaman. So they went with the good version, like the Atlantean King with the Justice League stuff. Now, when they did that, again, so what happens is they picked Hawkgirl over there, which led to a lot of like kind of people crying foul about Hawkgirl, which leads to kind of the gag we have in this episode. Where it's like the I Hate Hawkgirl websites, like all the boards, and Batman knows like there are at least 52 boards, like 57. I Hate Hawkgirl boards. He's about to go into vivid details. I get it. Anyway, so the point is. So there was a lot of like crying foul there, but Aquaman was introduced as kind of a guy they met along the way, who eventually became kind of a reserve member when they brought the Justice League Unlimited. So Aquaman, he was just introduced as it was like the UN stuff with Aquaman. Where Aquaman, there's an assassination attempt on him when he walks up to the UN to basically kind of chew people out, saying Atlantis is a real place. You got to include us in the UN. Essentially, that's what was happening.
You know what's funny is that almost kind of sounds like Black Panther's introduction in the MCU.
That's the thing. Kind of is, and then basically Deadshot takes a shot at him, and of course this leads to like a whole like, and Batman saves his life again. I'm sorry, I'm trailing off. The point is, Green Lantern is very skeptical of Aquaman because Aquaman.
Again, though, I must say your self-control regarding Batman is impeccable this podcast.
So Green Lantern. So the idea is Green Lantern, as I mentioned, he's the skeptic of the group. In this Aquaman, he's not exactly a friendly guy like Jason Momoa, and the Peter David one kind of was kind of an unfriendly guy. Again, they kind of play him like Namor the Submariner a little bit. That's kind of I don't want to get into the whole complexities of Aquaman Submariner, but the gist of it is Green Lantern was skeptical, and they butted heads a lot. And at the end of the day, it was kind of Green Lantern and Batman who helped save the day when Atlantis wasn't. But his brother Orm, who again you see in the movie, was trying to take the kingdom and everything from him. So the point is that's what's working Aquaman Falls and all of this. Now where was that? Where are we going with? Oh yes, God, with Hawkman, I'm just trying to think. Oh yeah, so the point is Hawkman. I mentioned Jeff Johns and all the good stuff that he's been doing. Jeff Johns, real quick. So Jeff Johns, he had done Hawkman as well, and he loves these characters. And that's the thing I always respect about Jeff Johns. He cares about these characters, and he really kind of dedicates some next level thinking to them. Mm-hmm. The guy is not really good in an event story, but he's really good at kind of like a really in-depth character piece. So Hawkman, Hawkman over the years too. Hawkman has he's been rebooted a bunch of times. So what Jeff Johns did is he somehow found a way to kind of work all of them in with each other, and they kind of did that version of it here, which I'm getting a sense may have rubbed you the wrong way a little bit. That's the thing. So Hawkman,
no. I mean, it didn't necessarily rub me the wrong way. I just thought it was weird.
And that's the thing. They tried.
I didn't like it. I thought it was enjoyable. I just didn't quite know what to make of it.
I guess they made the choice of they wanted to. How do you justify having all of these versions kind of converging in one guy? And I guess their out was that okay, we introduce in a really realistic, odd way where he's a stalker. And I mean, it kind of works. And the thing is, he's quite charming. You gotta get.
But that's the thing, Dragon. It's like we're talking about a guy who's like, to me, it's very hard to sympathize with any kind of stalker. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but he's a nice. It's James Remar being really charming.
Yeah.
I mean, he's being a really nice guy, and he's deluded as all get out, but he's a nice guy. See, that's the thing, because the idea of Hawkman is like sometimes he's a guy who just puts on fake hawk wings. Sometimes it's like Shire, where he's a guy who's like an actual hawk person from Thanagar. And then the third version, which again they did all three versions, is he believes they're reincarnated.
Right.
Which again is pretty much how it goes, and that's kind of a neat version of that. And what they did here smartly is that they called it in the question. That's why they have kind of the whole Shadow Thief thing, where they touched the piece of Thanagarian and said, the origin of Hawkman here is that he touches a piece of Thanagarian technology, which basically rewrites his memories, and that makes you wonder: is the guy crazy? It was a flawed piece of technology. Is he crazy, or is it actually now he knows that he's a reincarnated guy? So all of that said, we learned that John and Shire possibly because it's kind of a big cast of this version, they're kind of fated to be with each other. And despite Shire and Hawkman, they always find each other in each life, and then they die. That's kind of how that goes reincarnation wise. They always die, and even the CW shows did this in a neat way. But
charming.
That's the gist of it. And importantly, Hawkman he was still a nice guy despite being a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs.
All right.
Anyway, so all of that said, the big takeaway to bring it back to the whole here is, again, there was a really nice story about John Shire just kind of still falling for each other, even in a past life setting, and getting to the place where, again, they're set on their own ways, but they do still like each other. And again, they all walk away with something from the episode. He's kind of knows where he's at in life, and she knows that she has a son in the future, which gives her hope romantically. So it all works out.
All right.
Okay, let's talk about the major impact. How do you think Green Lantern impacts the culture and so on and so forth? Impacts us as well. Final thoughts, et cetera, et cetera. What do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that this is a character that is really a linchpin in the history of Black characters in comic books. Again, I really do. I think he's got as important of a role in DC as Luke Cage does in Marvel. I really do think they're, kind of a great comparison point. And like we said, it's like what I admire the most about the John Stewart character is, in spite of like the bananas high concept sci-fi that is the Green Lantern storyline, and it's something that even still after my crash course in John Stewart, I still haven't completely wrapped my head around. But John Stewart, he just finds a way to humanize it and to bring it into like this, this really relatable context. And, I think that's what I think that's the big appeal of Jon Stewart. I think, the line, all I see is a man and a woman. That's really what it gets to the core of what Jon Stewart is for me, because he transcends color dragon. You know what I mean? This is a guy where it's, he happens to be black, and he'd had, and at least in the comic book history, he has gone through his fair share of prejudice, even from a guy who's going to consider him his good friend, in the future. But I don't know. I just think there's such an interesting, like, everyman quality about this guy, where it almost sort of like makes us see past the skin color, because he's so relatable, and he's so kind of like universally charming. And and like I said, just the historical context, how we were able to get to that god awful spirit character, who I'm not even going to name again, to this is just it's a great significant step forward, and it's it's a black role model that I feel like kids could really be proud of. And honestly, Dragon, from what I'm understanding of this character, he seems a lot more nuanced than Luke Cage was back during the blaxploitation era of Luke Cage. And in that way, I almost kind of have more respect for him than I do Luke Cage, as much as we all love Luke Cage.
That was the
or, having a really grounded, nuanced, politically charged, but still very real black character in the same general era and timeline as Luke Cage, who's a very, over the top, like, watch your back, fool, Luke Cage is coming to town, like, I mean, Luke Cage is, he's still an inspirational figure by all means, but that guy was a jive talking motherfucker when he first came on the scene. So I don't know, man. That's all I got to say about Jon Stewart. I just think he's very down to earth, and I feel like in a lot of ways he was even more ahead of his time than the Marvel equivalent of his character was.
Yeah, it was one of the things DC had over Marvel at the time, where Marvel were introducing these characters who would go on to become increasingly more revolutionary. But DC, again, thanks to Neil Adams and also Danny O'Neill with the writing, but again, Neil Adams kind of pushing for things. That's why I'm emphasizing the Neil Adams of it all. Because that's the thing, Danny is like more of like, okay, yeah, give me the job, I'll do it right. Of course. The point being, and they really kind of hit the ground running once they were able to get their foot in the door. That's the thing. Once they really get the foot in the door, then it was just kind of like off running. But yeah, so for me, the big takeaway, I think the big impact that you can see that Jon Stewart has, and the reason we're starting off Black History here is the DC version of it with Jon Stewart of all characters, is because one of the most historic things, and one of the big reasons Jon Stewart's always talked up so much, is because he is such a beloved character. It's a beloved character. He's people. There was a time where when the Green Lantern movie was announced, there was a number of people who were kind of surprised at how Jordan was picked. Some people, because think about it, Steve. For a whole generation of people who grew up with this show, grew up with Justice League, and so on and so forth, they grew up with Jon Stewart as their Green Lantern. They did. They grew up with Jon Stewart as that Green Lantern, as like the definitive Green Lantern. I gotta say, his popularity has definitely surpassed Hal Jordan, because Hal Jordan And by the way, I probably should have mentioned this in the animated show. The reason they went with Jon Stewart was that for two very simple reasons. One, Hal Jordan was kind of a little nuts in the comics at that time. They did some really weird stuff in the late '90s with Hal Jordan. I won't bore you with the details. The point is, he kind of turned into a supervillain in the '90s. It's really weird. And so basically, he wasn't a super popular, kind of mentor character, like a super role model of a character at that time. Like, people saw the show and then looking at Hal Jordan, what was coming out at the time, and been like, wow, he's wearing the rings of dead Green Lanterns. He's going power mad.
Oh God!
And but he was possessed by Parallax, the bad guy in the first Green Lantern movie. Parallax, he was possessed by, so he's bad guy. It was dumb. Anyway, the point is, so while that was happening, and the other reason is, again, because of that visual, Bruce Timm, he looked at the reserve Green, the big iconic reserve, like the other Green Lantern, which is Jon Stewart, and the big thing that jumped out to him was the fact that his Green Lantern didn't wear a mask. And again, design-wise, he gave him the green eyes, which kind of made him jump out even more. So because of that fact, again, because of one of those iconic things about him, he kind of was introduced in that show, and he became even more iconic thanks to that show, to the point where, again, he is the definitive Green Lantern. He's definitely more popular, and I would say, again, for my money, I mean, look, Hal Jordan's cool, and he can be cool, but again, I had to be convinced to like Hal Jordan. I already loved John Stewart. From the get-go, from when I was introduced to him, he's not he's not just a costumed hero. He was Earth's Green Lantern because he related to the man on the street, because he had great judgment. In the comics and in the animated show, he's a guy. Think about this, Tiki. Think about the impact of it. He's someone who's powerful. He wields what has been described as the most powerful weapon in the universe, like one of the most, like a mass-producible, powerful weapon in the universe, the Green Lantern rings. And he became an authority figure, again, something he was vastly against in his early years. Basically, you have a very powerful black authority figure, a black man wielding a tool like that, wielding that power, being trusted with that power, and at the same time, taking that and being such a cool role model with it. That's, again, great. So again, kids do idolize this guy. Kids love this Green Lantern. They love this take on it. Like I've been in Comic Cons, and I've been in the line talking with guys, and they always there's always a lot of love for John Stewart. It always kind of touches my heart. The guy, he's most adaptable to the Green Lanterns. He kind of represents the outreach of the Green Lantern Corps. It's like you have him. It's like he goes from the military to kind of something worthy of the sheer willpower that he has. Like, he kind of goes from military to something a little bit more intergalactic, kind of lives up to his full potential. He's the everyman with the ring who fought expectations that were, that were kind of thrust upon him. Like, people had expectations, or kind of some prejudices kind of lobbed against him in the beginning. And of course, his integrity and his practical instincts kind of overpowered that, and kind of showed everybody, oh my God, this guy, he's a natural for a hero. Everybody loves this guy. Like, never once over the years has he lost the humanity that made him worthy of that darn ring. It's like never once has a man not been worthy of that ring. At least in the animated show, of course, you have that big brouhaha with the Cosmic Odyssey, but still, it's a guy who's carrying that burden with him. Again, it's not all sunshine and rainbows, but it's a guy who's taking responsibility for his actions, and again, being someone you could respect, and kind of be kind of that role model. Again, he's a role model in the sense of Luke Cage is a role model. Absolutely, I do agree with that. He's a Green Lantern. He's debatably the best Green Lantern for a reason, and I got to tell you, we really need to see him. We need the next representation of him. That's the one thing that bothers me with John Stewart. We haven't had anything really worthy of him in animation or anything else since. We really haven't, and that's a shame, because he's appeared time to time. That's been about it. We've seen him, but he barely has a line of dialogue, and we haven't seen him in film. We need more John Stewart. We need something to honor this character even more. So that's really where. That's really where I'm coming from on John Stewart. Again, there's nothing but love for this guy. I'm so glad we started Black History here, starting with John Stewart. Okay.
All right, folks, that's all for now. Until next time, when we talk about the heroes who made the leap from the page to the screen, showing us a world not just simply black or white, but brimming with color as well as character.
With our next installment of Black History Heroes.
I'm Luke Cage!
Light 'em up!